Okay. Hello there. Welcome to another Irrational Passions Game of the Year 2017 roundtable discussion of 10 video games we think best represent the year and the site. I am your host, Jurge Cruz Alvarez of irrationalpassions.com, twitter.com, tumblr.com, Pinterest. I signed up a Pinterest recently. I have gathered here the brightest minds in the industry at large.
Really?
Hard sell.
I've assembled a think tank here to talk about Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, developed by Machine Games and published by Bethesda. I almost forgot the publisher for this game. With me here, I have Seth Shepard, freelance writer, seen at places like Waypoint, and creator and host of Whose Games Is This podcast. Seth, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Amazing. Ready to talk about Wolfenstein 2.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're ready to talk about Wolfenstein 2 and not like the Raven game, Wolfenstein.
Is this a Wolfenstein 2 podcast? I'm just ready to talk about it whenever.
Yeah. Which that game is actually connected to this. I also have here Logan Moore of DualShockers and is it Model Citizens podcast?
Yeah, so we've got Model Citizens Media. That is our podcasting brand that houses like 3 or 4 different podcasts. So modelcitizensmedia.com. You can see everything we do over there.
Mm-hmm. And also, the way I was introduced to Logan was through the Chic Hydrobot photo at the Game Awards, which is pretty good.
That is legendary.
Yeah, that was a weird day, an evening and weekend. Just that whole weekend was very strange. But
even from afar, that was just a weird show in general.
Yeah, it was fun to be a part of a meme for like 3 days there or something like that.
And that voice that you hear right there is Neil Rivera, at the Young Neil on Twitter of Red Tooth Gaming. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And of course, we have John Weingartner at Plankfan of Twitter.com.
Wow.
You guys have all these professional credentials. You're actual legitimate people who have like an interest and active profession in the games industry, and I'm just
that's not true.
Just shit posting.
Listen, man, I'm a one-man YouTube channel. I have just as much credential as you.
Okay, that's more than
John is
getting the lowly ad views.
John is out there on the front lines of the discourse on Twitter.com about the important things relating to.
I'm the guy you see retweeting posts from 2012.
That's good. That's good.
Oh yeah, that's where the good stuff was. Honestly, I think Twitter peaked in 2012.
I was gonna say 2014 was like the crest, and after that was like a steady decline of content as more new users joined up.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not here to talk about Soulja Boy, the video game coming to the Xbox 720 and PlayStation 4.
Not yet. We're not.
We're going to talk about
2018.
Yeah.
Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus. So I guess the setup for this podcast, we're going to start with a discussion without any spoilers. So if you haven't played Wolfenstein yet, we're going to have a light discussion about what we think about it and maybe why you should play it. And then we will go into incredible spoilers about this game that has a lot of spoilery moments and significant moments.
Yeah, especially I love the part when Hitler gets the nice kiss. he kisses the gun.
Oh, it was just like Sonic 06 when Sonic kisses the girl.
Oh yeah.
And John, you kind of already sort of spoiled the game, but
did I?
Yeah, well,
the only kiss I remember from that game is me kissing my monitor after I beat it.
Like the Italian chef hand kiss is what I did at the end of that game.
The gesture.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll start with me. I am the host here. So, Wolfenstein 2, for context for me, I played The New Order, which was the first game that came out in 2014, sort of at the advent of the release of the PS4 and Xbox One. And that was kind of like the big game for a while, like for months. And so I feel like that game did well because so many people felt like they had to play something. And I wasn't sure about it, but in the end, I felt mixed on it. I think it had some really great moments, but I thought the gameplay felt a little dated. I thought it did the sneaking better than I think this game did. But I had fond memories, and these sort of times we were living in 2017 made me very excited to play something of the subject matter and themes of Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus. but yeah, so I was going into this with a lot of expectations, and I did not expect it to hit those expectations. I think this game goes places that I don't think. I thought the advertising for this game made it seem like the game was going to touch on subjects, but not actually. And it was just the marketing team like, we could take advantage of this. But I thought the themes and the characters and the moments of the game really, really surprised me. But I still am not in love with the gameplay parts of it. And I know, Seth, you have some really interesting thoughts on that. We'll get into that, I think, with the spoilers maybe.
That gets into more spoilery stuff, but I can kind of lay out a framework for it.
Sure. But yeah, I really, really enjoy the game. I think the more I think about it, the more I enjoy it. I think it's easy to walk away from it and pretty much think about because this game is so divisive that I sometimes think about the things that don't work on it so well. But listening to the recent Giant Bomb Game of the Year 2017 podcast and them having their own category for Wolfenstein really made me reflect. That game was pretty good. Well, with that being said, Logan, what are your thoughts on Wolfenstein: The New Colossus?
I really like it. I mean, in simplest terms,
if true.
Controversial opinion there.
I think it's the best shooter that's come out this generation. And I'd say it's probably like this and Doom would be like my 1A and 1B. It's really close. Yeah, I mean, kind of what you said there. I think just going off of what you said, I think I enjoy the core gameplay a bit more than you do. And what really separated it for me, though, was its leaning into the themes that you kind of touched on there. And I think they do that in an interesting way with some of the characters, which we'll obviously touch on. I think this is like the hardest one to not get into spoilers with too early, because there's like so many things I want to say out of the gate. But yeah, I think it was the story and the fact that they made BJ Blaskowitz a compelling character with tons of emotional depth, which was something they tried to do in the New Order, but it didn't click with me. Like I saw that what they were trying to do there, but it just kind of came off as like, oh, here's another, like, I don't know. Most video game stories, I think, honestly kind of suck because I think they're poorly written. And that's kind of how the New Order came off to me. It's like, oh, they're trying to do something here, but it's another video game where they don't really hit the mark. They totally hit the mark in the New Colossus. And like BJ Blaskowitz is all of a sudden like one of the most compelling characters of the year. And that's what really separates the game for me, though, like just comparing it to other shooters. Like, yes, there are other shooters that do better things, I think, on a raw gameplay mechanical level, but it's that story, because I've never seen a story matched up with a shooter like this, like in a really long time. Like that's what really separates it for me.
For the record, my favorite part of the New Colossus is probably the train car sequence that opens up with you and that coffee with that crazy physics and ends with a really well done sex scene. Like it's probably one of my favorite sex scenes in a video game. Like
I thought I thought the nudity was handled very tastefully.
It was really good. Seth, what do you feel about the Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus?
So I like this game. I like it a lot. It's one of my favorites of the year, but I feel like maybe the politics of it, I feel like don't quite land in the way that the game was marketed to, and sometimes like it seems like popular discussions lead on that it does. There's this one tweet that I saw that kind of laid out these like words to a thought that I hadn't really formed yet. That was like, it said that this game feels like it's from an alternate timeline, just because this game has been, I mean, it's been in production for like the last like 2 years. And a lot of the time it feels kind of like Machine Games stumbled into a really highly relevant premise politically.
I agree.
And it's one, I mean, there wasn't like people talking about some of the things in Wolfenstein, like in the news and stuff like that. I mean, you look at, I guess, like recent events like the Charlottesville white nationalists riot and stuff like that. Things like that weren't really in the news as much as they are now, back when this game was first like starting production, or when Machine Games first started making the Wolfenstein games again. So there are points in this game that kind of feel like they're from this alternate reality where sometimes these things aren't really happening. As far, I mean, and that just, I'm not faulting the developer. That's just, I mean, how games are made.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're like,
Machine Games isn't really from the United States.
That's what I was going
Yeah,
to
that's
say
the other thing.
as well. Like Bethesda's been able to, I think, lean into the marketing of the game a little bit more because they're American company. But yeah, Machine Games is, I think, Swedish.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fact check that.
Okay. So while you're doing that, I think the game, it makes all these allegories to the modern moment. Most of the time in like these kind of like text articles, like letters, notes, newspaper articles that very obviously line up with modern events. So I think the politics of the story aren't as like strong, or at least the themes aren't as strong for me as they are for maybe some other people. Just because it feels a little bit like a mismatch. But the story in this game is really amazing, and I understand a lot of the frustrations with the gameplay, but I think there's a narrative context to it, with like how the game treats bodies, that I can get into more with the spoilery section because it lines up with the story in different ways as it goes along.
And they are Swedish. They are Swedish.
They are? Okay.
Yeah.
But I was also
John?
really...
Oh, yeah.
What?
Sorry, Seth. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I was actually really excited for this game going in. The New Order I played, and I was kind of bad at it, and I feel like it didn't land for me like it did for a lot of people just because I wasn't the best. But I'm a really big fan of the people who founded Machine Games, who like worked at Starbreeze on like the Chronicles of Riddick games. And I think they do really interesting stuff. So I was really excited for this game, and it landed for me.
Seth Shepard, a big fan of Tygon Studios.
Oh yeah.
John, what are your thoughts on Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus?
Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, as you just said, is a video game that I played last month and completed. I actually picked up on a massive pile of games on Black Friday that I have yet to fully complete, but it was one of the first ones that I started and one of the ones that definitely hooked me the most. I forget, what is the name of the expansion for the first one?
The Old Blood.
The Old Blood. I played the first Wolfenstein, but I did not beat the Old Blood because I got stuck on a section. I'm just like, oh god, there's too much else to play. I never went back to that. So, for context, I beat the first one, went to the second one. God, what it was great. It was way more narrative driven than I expected it to be.
Oh yeah.
For a shooter. Like I went into this as a game sort of like I was thinking, it's gonna be like Doom. I'm just gonna run and gun all these Nazis down. I'm not gonna follow the story. I'm just gonna skip all the cutscenes. No, man, I was drawn into the cutscenes like no other shooter has really in recent memory. Definitely a diverse cast of characters, which I greatly appreciated just in terms of like who they were, how they behaved, interacted with one another. It wasn't all just like, generic shooter, soldier people in a war, you know what I mean? What else do I want to talk about? Oh yeah, stealth. Stealth is something that I like in Metal Gear Solid and not many other games, including this one. I really wanted to approach this at first as a not primarily stealth-driven game, but at least moderately stealth-driven in the sense that I didn't want to just plow through all the levels, not go off to any stray paths, look at any collectibles, that sort of thing. But as I quickly learned through the levels, if I so much as just tossed a stone in the wrong direction, an entire squadron of enemies would swarm upon me. So I kind of had to quickly abandon the whole stealth thing, which was kind of disappointing to me. But
yeah,
and I feel like the level design was made with stealth in mind to a certain degree, with all like the kind of narrow corridors in some levels and just the openness of others. And I just didn't play it how I hoped I was going to, but I played it nonetheless.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Me personally, just speaking for myself, I think the New Order did a better job of allowing you. I think the spaces allowed for stealth a little bit more. I think it still had that if you messed up, you are gonna get wrecked really, really quickly.
Yeah. That's another thing. That lack of regenerating health, lack of regenerating shields, the whole I gotta pick everything up. I gotta look down at the ground and press square to pick everything up when I should be focusing on combat, but I have to instead worry about my dwindling health that will only go back up to 10.
And there's also a narrative sort of tie into that. And I guess for folks who haven't played Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, to sort of set it up, we're following. At the end of the New Order, you sort of take down General or something Death's End. I don't know what his title is, and I don't really care. But you take him down, and he was sort of another connection to the Wolfenstein game made by Raven. I forget exactly what his whole part in everything is, but
he was in the Old Blood, wasn't he? Wasn't he like the main bad guy that I think BJ was chasing down throughout the Old Blood?
He's the final boss of the original Wolfenstein, like the reboot.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we see at the end of that game, it ends on a very sad note where it seems you're not really sure what is going on or if BJ is even alive still, and where this game ends on a bombastic, annoying sort of cover of "We're Not Gonna Take It." The first game ends on this like solemn, really sad song because we're not really sure if there is a room to even if the story even has a second chapter. And so we opened New Colossus where BJ is in a wheelchair and because his body's sort of giving up on him, he doesn't like all of these years of fighting are finally catching up to him. And you only have
and then the explosion, and then he's in a coma, so his body's kind of atrophying a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that there was even a second part of this game, I wasn't even expecting them. I know it had been rumored for years, but I mean, the fact that they even came out and announced it surprised me because of the way the first one ended.
Yeah. I remember there being, I think, in Bethesda's E3 presentation like 2 years ago, they had like this old like computer operating system showing all their different games they were announcing, and at one point it said the new Colossus, and I remember like people at Giant Bomb were like losing their minds, saying there's going to be a new Wolfenstein, and then I think it also said like Doom 2 on there, but
they definitely hinted at it, but it was just crazy. I mean, because I mean, just the way that game ended.
Yeah, it's like a year before any kind of official announcement came out. So
right. And it's but that everything about that has significance even to the gameplay because you are only given 50% health for those opening chapters of the game.
I thought I did something horribly wrong that like, justified me. It's like, oh yeah, you didn't go this way. You lose half the health for the game until I realized, oh, this is actually part of the design.
Yeah, and that makes it pretty gosh darn challenging. And I think we'll get into that with the spoilers again because there is. So there is stuff around that, but
one more thing before that, the difficulty spikes in this game were abrupt and intrusive beyond my wildest dreams.
For like a poll of the room, what difficulty did everybody play the game on, or what difficulty did you finish on?
Infant baby.
I did out of the 7. I think I did like the second from the bottom. I don't.
Yeah, it was the same.
I did normal, so like I think I did the 3rd or 4th one.
I started at normal, and then I ended up just kicking it down and stayed there for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I may have started normal. I can't remember. I think I did like 1 below normal.
Yeah.
The game has a lot of difficulty levels. More than you would expect from a shooter.
And earlier, John was talking about kind of the combat design being set up with all these pickups. There's no regenerating health or shields or anything or ammo, so you have to go and pick up everything. And that was like kind of frustrating for me. Even though I'm a proponent for the gameplay, it was pretty frustrating. The main thing that was more frustrating for me was it wasn't good at damage signaling. Like you wouldn't,
definitely.
Unless you're paying attention to this little number of UI that takes up like less than 5% of the screen down at the bottom of your health and armor, like you would die pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's nothing like blood rolling down the screen or anything to really indicate that you're taking massive amounts of damage except for those numbers.
I mean, it was pretty much just like, I mean, and also the fact that you only have a max of 50 plays into that, where it's like, oh, I'm getting shot and now I'm dead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also in the opening level, one of the things, so you start out at 50% health, but also you're in a wheelchair rolling around on this submarine killing Nazis, and the way you control is actually a lot different than how it was in like the New Order, or I'm assuming the Old Blood. I didn't play the Old Blood, but you have to actually like maneuver kind of like you're actually in something that has 2 wheels on the sides rather than just using 2 legs.
Mm-hmm. And the theme of BJ as a character and his body is a big point in the game. And that's sort of it's a game of obviously about getting this group to fight back over this regime, but I think the new Colossus spends a lot more time looking into BJ, and we'll obviously get to that. But I think that sets up the sort of game, the tone if you haven't played the new Colossus. And so we're at this point now where things aren't looking sure. The characters have obviously made a major blow to the organization. And now sort of the head up is Frau Engel, who was sort of second in command. Again, I'm not sure. I can't remember 100%. Second in command under General Deshead, who is this sort of loose, I don't even know how you would describe her. Does anyone have a good description for Frau? For those
she's set up as just kind of like this diabolical, just pure evil character. I mean, as far as descriptions go, I mean, she's pretty much like the pure, just face of evil.
I picture her as like the teacher from the Magic School Bus if she was a bad person.
Oh my god,
Nazi.
That person is
there we go.
Yeah, and she's actually she was in the first game on that train sequence you were talking about earlier, right, George. So I mean, we kind of have, if you played the first game, an engagement with her before where she runs these like tests on BJ to see if he's truly an Aryan, and then later on she reveals that these tests were just like there's no actual meaning behind them. She holds up like I think Rorschach tests, and she's like, "What do you see? If you're an Aryan, you'll say the right thing." But then at the end, she just deflates it all and says, "Oh, it's all subjective," and she was just playing a prank on you. There's no right answer. So she has kind of this like, I guess, personality of just like toying with people and flexing.
And that's shown
powers.
even like through her relationship with her daughter and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, and on top of that, she's got a sick sense of humor too. I mean, she, the degree to which she messes with people, it's like borderline inhumane. Oh no, it is inhumane.
Yeah.
So, I think transitioning to spoilers, real quick, like that is the sort of setup for the game. We are following up after this giant blow we dealt, but we're not sure if BJ, the sort of force that moves, that actually like propelled this resistance, can make it. And the implications of that are central to the story and a giant point in the game that switches the whole thing up. So it is this middle chapter of this series where this group finally comes together and we actually get momentum. In that first game, there was this grand plan to deal this attack, but in the game we knew even if we do this it's not happy ending. This is just the beginning, and this game sort of is the next step in that. So that being said, we're not going to go into spoilers, and I guess since we're so much talking about BJ and his body and all of that, how about that moment when you're in
There's a lot
Washington?
of moments in this game.
One of the moments, and I think it's weird. It feels weird to just sort of jump into this, but it felt like the most natural thing that's.
No, let's do it.
It's it's the biggest talking point of the game too. I mean,
otherwise we're just talking around it.
Yeah,
Seth, maybe do you want to start talking? Set up this. I guess we don't have to set up this moment because you're here. Spoilers, BJ gets his head chopped off after he goes to visit.
Oh, sorry.
Head chopped off after he
played the
goes
original Wolfenstein 2.
Oh my god!
Yeah, after he goes to visit his father in Mesquite, Texas. And I think we're going to talk about that moment as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it's this moment where. It's the game has been pretty grim, and BJ's inner monologue has also been extremely grim about what the future holds. And it's this moment where you get captured and you think, oh, obviously something's going to happen, but it fakes you out multiple times. Where a scene like there's a scene where a character tries to break you out in Super Spesh, who is the husband of one of the resistance leaders in the game. I think Grace is her name.
Grace, yeah.
She's kind of a Angela Davis stand-in.
Yeah. And that doesn't go well, and you're in this courtroom scene, and you just bust out your chains and raise hell in probably one of the most difficult parts of the game if you're playing it on normal difficulty.
I had to play that like maybe 10 times.
Yeah, it's bad. But it's this moment they're like, oh, of course, here we go. And you get to a scene with your mother, which we haven't even talked about yet. But again, it's important to get to this moment because it's the moment where it's the game, like everything's possible in this game, sort of. BJ loses his head, and it is then sort of it is then implanted on a super soldier's body that they have, that the resistance have. So, Seth, how did you feel about this whole moment, or your thought process while the moment was happening?
So first of all, I was really impressed because, I know this game has a lot of weird kind of pop science fiction kind of futurism stuff, but there is a drone in this game that retrieves the head as it falls, which I thought was funny.
Oh, right.
But so that moment is kind of another addition in a series of moments in the game that talk about BJ's body. So you start off, you're in a wheelchair, your body is is kind of atrophied and giving out on you, and your health cut, move in a new way because your body has this modification on it with the wheelchair to be able to move throughout the space, and you have to like find new ways to move around the submarine that you weren't able to in your regular body. Then the game goes on. The resistance leader gets her head cut off, and you get her power suit. So even though your body is still failing, you're in this new power suit, and your health is, or I guess your armor is upped from that point. But then you keep going through the game and everything. You find a couple different.
That thing with Caroline is also really big because she was sort of, again, she was one of the connections from Wolfenstein, and she was the sort of force who's been for so long, and she is she's sort of the leader, kind of, because when she dies, they're sort of leaderless. Does everyone here agree with that?
Quick? I mean, she was definitely the one pulling the strings, where like BJ definitely felt just kind of like the muscle. But I mean, even going into developing the plot for Wolfenstein 2, it was very much, hey, this is Caroline's plan. This is what she wanted to do. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So sorry, in death.
No, you're good.
You can go on, Seth. Yeah.
Okay, so the game goes on a little bit more. You're still in this armor suit, but your organic body is still kind of giving out, and then your head gets chopped off, and they save your head, and in this kind of crazy sci-fi fashion. I mean, this game is like incredibly pulpy, but in another kind of very pulpy thing, they have found this kind of laboratory manufactured Aryan body. It's synthetic. It is like the Aryan ideal, but then materialized, which, I mean, this is just like gets down to Nazi racial theory, being this thing that is incredibly subjective and like not actually like true. So they made the Aryan body that is supposed to be this great, amazing thing. They made the material version of that. So, I mean, it's fake. It's not real. And then your head gets put onto that. And then, I mean, you're also given the choice of different body modifications that allow you to move through spaces and approach combat encounters in different ways. You can like compress your chest to get in vents and tubes. You can lengthen your legs to get to higher surfaces. You can like pad your shoulders to run through walls and run through people. So you're able to kind of do different things. So, I mean, that's kind of it as far as the way the body changes. But I also think it's interesting because, I mean, Wolfenstein was like one of the first first-person shooters, and like the first like very popular one, or at least like one of the first to really get on people's radar. So BJ is like this very iconic character in video games, but what he stood for has kind of been this unadulterated power fantasy. And so when it reframes that power fantasy of being able to go anywhere and shoot anyone and do anything, and reframes it within the body of the kind of Aryan ideal and the like the Nazi body, essentially, I think there's a politics to that that doesn't get tackled in a lot of other things. A lot of first-person shooters, like I was just playing the new Call of Duty today, and it was kind of like, I don't know, it just sees the first-person shooter body as something that is just a vessel for the player, but this actually has a narrative to that body.
Real quick, is anyone else hearing this weird static noise?
Yep.
Yeah.
Are y'all?
Yeah. Is it you, Seth?
For mine. Here, let me see if I can do something about that. I stopped recording.
Oof.
Yeah, that's some thick static.
Hey.
Okay, maybe. Are we good now? Maybe. Oh no.
Yeah, that's some thick static. Hold on.
Oof.
Mm-hmm. You guys didn't stop recording, did you?
No.
No.
Okay, good. I can just cut it out when we get it fixed then.
Through the power of editing.
Mm-hmm.
Have fun.
But the video people, I don't think the video people are fucked though. But
that's how it always works out.
That's what you get for the high premium content.
yeah.
We'll go on we'll record on YouTube and we'll go on like 20-minute breaks sometimes during our podcast. It's like, all right, we'll be back sometime. Scrub through until we're back.
Yeah, Alex insists on the video version, so I don't know. If Seth can fix it quickly, I think we'll just jump on to the next topic.
All right. When did that start for y'all?
It started like 5 minutes before we cut you off.
God, sorry that I just kept going that whole time.
You're still a little staticky right now.
Am I? Okay. I may. Let me see if I can switch.
Beat the mic up, like punch it a few times.
Punch it.
Just showed who's boss.
Yeah.
Assert your dominance over that silver ball.
God. Okay. All right. Can y'all hear me? How well can you hear me right now?
There's still some. I mean, we can hear you, but you're faded. And there's still some static.
All right, I switched microphones. Let me see. Sorry about the issue. All this microphone.
It's like a nice toasty fire.
It is. It does sound like that.
It really is.
It's a fireside chat. There
George,
we
is
go.
that your fireplace? Did you use
God,
your
I hope
fireplace?
not.
Be some ambient noise.
Okay. How does that sound?
A little better.
Keep talking to me. Yeah, keep talking, Seth.
Oh, hello. Hard pass on that one, buddy.
Nope.
You know what might help is if you like turn your video off entirely. I don't know if it's the mic. It seems like it's the mic, obviously, but
Yeah.
Oh, it's a me now.
Oh, hello.
Keep talking, Seth. See if it works. That
Okay, I'm talking a little bit more. I'm going to go back to the microphone really quickly.
this is 5,000% better, though.
Yeah, this is pretty. This
Is
is
it?
hot. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, this is way better.
Okay, I think this is my on headphone microphone. Is that going to be a problem?
I mean, if it's not,
It's not going to be like banging up against my shirt, but
okay. If it sounds like this, I think this is workable.
Yeah.
Are
you? Were you on Wi-Fi?
yeah, I'm on Wi-Fi.
Maybe there wasn't enough bandwidth to pump over that high quality audio and video.
That's why I told him to turn it off. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess if you want to try the blue now, the snowball, you can.
yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back to the snowball really quick.
Okay.
Okay, no, it was the mic.
It's back.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the mic.
Yeah, it's back.
Ah,
Back in full
All right.
force. Just
It's
I
the
switched back.
mic. All right.
all right. Cool.
Those wires that come with the snowballs suck. I've had those short out on me like 2 or 3 times.
I haven't
Yeah,
had an issue
well-
with mine. I've had one for a while. All right.
Sorry about that,
So
y'all.
I think.
Here, I'm going to start
going-
recording again. Do like a 3, 2, 1 just to make it easier for the editor, I guess.
Do a 3, 2, 1. I think I'm going to do a 3, 2, 1. Well, these guys are still recording, and I'm still recording.
Yeah.
So I guess 3, 2, 1, go. You record.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's what I meant. Is just for me to record, but I'm just trying to like as far as y'all having like the master file, and then mine just gets matched.
Yeah. Okay. So in 3, 2, 1,
What do
go.
you think?
Seth, you hit, and then I'll pick the conversation back up.
Gotcha. And again, sorry about this happening.
No, it's fine. 3, 2, 1, go. So
All right.
that moment at Washington is obviously a very pivotal moment, and I think it is sort of at the core of, because this game is really focused on BJ as a character, but that is the fact that his body is falling apart is a big part of that. But there are moments leading up to that, and a big moment of that is we learn about his backstory as a child. And there's a lot of that. There's the opening moment of that game. I know that opening moment works for some folks, and some folks it really doesn't work. I personally thought that I figured that they were going to do more with that. But Logan, do you maybe want to talk about that aspect of BJ's development as a character, because it's so crucial? The fact about his father and the mother bit.
Yeah, I think adding like a familial aspect to why BJ hates Nazis was like incredibly smart and powerful, because I mean that's what BJ has kind of always represented up until this game, really, is he's just this meathead who hates Nazis, and that's like those are his 2 defining character aspects, is that he wants to just shoot Nazis, which is fine and it's fun, but I think they decided to kind of hone that in a little bit more. Like, okay, why does this guy fucking hate Nazis so much? Why is that literally the only thing he wants to do, besides obviously Nazis suck, but like why is he so impassioned by it? And going back to his childhood, and obviously seeing that his father, learning later on that his father sold his mother out because his mother is Jewish, correct? Right?
Yeah.
It's been like 2. I've not played this game since.
I think if I remember correctly, and I mean I'll need to be fact checked, but I think she was half Jewish, half Polish, because I think BJ is part Polish as well.
Yeah,
That's
that sounds right. Yeah, because it didn't sound right that she was full Jewish or anything like that. So yeah, and then like finding out that he's got daddy issues and that his father essentially sold his mom out, not for really anything other than some land, and that was basically it. Like taking it back to those roots and understanding like, oh, this dude is not just grown up and he was like a soldier in the war and he's, oh, I hate Nazis because I want to kill Nazis and they're the enemy. No, this is a long standing thing that goes back to with him since he was a child. And I think that was a really smart thing because it provides context for that. And it makes sense to why he's almost like has like one frame of mind when it comes to these past games in some ways. I thought that was really smart. I thought everything with his dad was really the game obviously peaks at the middle with everything we've talked about with BJ dying and all of that and the confrontation with his father. And I thought that the end of that kind of storyline and then moving into the second half of the game really made the second portion of the game a lot weaker because it was those backstory elements that really kept me interested and lured into the game for the first couple hours. So once that went away, I want to say less interested because obviously that's when things start to get a little crazier.
Yeah.
But
I think for a lot of people, you're not alone that I think that first half is the more powerful part. I'd be interested to hear if anyone here feels different, but before we do that, I want to maybe drill down a little bit more into that father character because I think for a lot of people this that bit the whole thing might not work because some people would say that he may be a little bit too cartoonish. I'm not of that mindset personally, especially in this year. It doesn't seem too far off. But if someone wants to,
believable.
If someone wants to talk about John, maybe do you want to talk about maybe the father character a little bit?
From what I remember, it seemed like a bit just kind of cartoonish, but also believable in a sense that is somebody I could have seen existing in that time period. Although it might be argued that it was kind of cliche, I feel like it
the
worked.
Part with the part with the dog, maybe. I don't know.
Remind me again. Is that where he like made you shoot the dog?
Yeah, it was like his way of punishing you.
Yeah.
I mean,
that seemed a bit like abruptly excessive to me.
I kind of liked it within the context later on once they showed the scene of his father giving BJ the BB gun and then later kind of turning that on its head because you see the opposite end of it early on in the game where he has to shoot the dog and then seeing it later when he gives BJ the BB gun and introduces him to that stuff and like you can fight monsters with this or whatever. I like how those two kind of play off of each other, but I would agree that it's kind of
it's like a stark contrast in behavior.
Yeah,
I think the inclusion of his father character. I mean, I'll probably agree that he's probably a little cartoonish, but I think it does two things really well that serve the game and kind of the overall themes really well. In that it sets up BJ as, it kind of reminds you that post-war era, and then granted, I know this is a alternate universe, but 40s and 50s era rural Texas. It shows the upbringing that he had, and it kind of shows that, if BJ can come from this background and still despise the idea of Nazis, then, that
says something about his character, for sure.
Yeah, and it says something about the people today who are kind of leaning towards Nazism or not really just outright denying it. I think that's one of the game's more stronger social commentaries. And then
now, do you think I'm assuming when they were making this game, they weren't setting out to communicate any kind of social commentary, and it just so happened that they ended up doing it inadvertently?
But
I think so, maybe. Do you have something to say specifically? Because I know I haven't been able to talk about it. I'm really interested in your opinion about the father character.
So earlier Neil mentioned that using the father character as this kind of person to lay out BJ's childhood. And the way he was raised and what he was raised in and how he then went on to hate Nazis. I think there's also a stark comparison. This is just kind of one moment in the game. But so after BJ goes to hunt monsters with a BB gun, you see him in the bed kind of laying with this gun. And this same image is kind of flipped a little bit later when you go to the Nazi Venus base
to audition for a play, or not audition for a play, to audition for a propaganda film about them killing you. And you see Hitler come in, and after he like shoots someone, I think, I don't remember exactly when this happened in that sequence, but you see Hitler.
He shoots
Ronald Reagan.
Actors.
Yeah, he shoots Ronald Reagan, and then he throws up and he lays down on the floor and kind of cradles this in like a bit of a fetal position, and then cradles this pistol that he used to shoot Ronald Reagan in a similar way. I'm not saying these are the same image or anything, but I think that the game does lay out kind of the way, like the trajectory you can go on from this kind of a start in life, I guess, and how BJ then went down a different path.
I had no idea that was Ronald Reagan until.
Yeah, it's Ronald Reagan.
Oh, yeah.
If you talk to the actors, they say his name is Ronald. And if you get where he's from and his accent, he becomes pretty apparent. Sort of the Jimi Hendrix of this game.
Wow.
I did not know that. That was
that's
my friend mentioned it to me, and I didn't believe him. But then, like, he texted me the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, that was Ronald Reagan, Seth. I was right. You were wrong, idiot." And I was like, "All right, that's pretty funny."
Right? Yeah, I really wanted to make sure we talked on that part because I think there are a lot of divisive points in this game, and I think it is part of the tonal shift that this game constantly does, which I think for me works very well, but for a lot of folks don't. It's the bit where we can switch from moments where where we see this father character who's just saying awful racial obscenities, or these moments where BJ has these very introspective moments about he's going to die, but then we having weird moments of humor, maybe within the submarine. And so
naked women shooting Nazi dogs.
Yeah, that was a weird bit. I don't know how I feel about that one.
Or there's like a pig that you feed, or there's like a weird like off Gone Home or off Everybody's Gone to the Rapture style level. Like this game has a lot of different points that it jumps between, and I think it lands most of those jumps.
So that's the thing I wanted to say. John, maybe how did those changes in tone, how did you feel about that?
The tone shifts are one of the things that really kept me going through the game, whereas any traditional shooter, be it Call of Duty, which takes itself seriously pretty much the entire time, or something like the Battlefield Bad Company games, where it kind of has that lighthearted comedic feel the entire time. This one, jumping back and forth, really kept me hooked on it all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even compared to like your other traditional first-person shooters, I mean, the cast of characters, I mean, you're more likely to remember the cast of characters. Even
it's an eclectic group for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have significant roles, and I mean, I'm hard-pressed to remember half of their names, but you remember, oh yeah, this scene with Sigrund and the guy when they walk in on him and they're having sex in the submarine, and it's like just lighthearted moments like that, you look back on and remember, and it's not all just like, oh, Nazis are bad.
Things that really split up the serious, brutal things with lighthearted comedic coitus in a submarine.
Well,
or I mean, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, one of the things I really appreciate about this game too, and something I've always loved about video games, is that, like, as much as we can talk about like the serious nature of these things and talk about like the themes of Wolfenstein and the characteristics of BJ's dad and all that stuff, like, the one thing I adore about video games is that they're inherently kind of dumb. Like, for example, like one of my favorite games of all time is BioShock, and that is like one of the most like.
It's a very dumb video game.
It is a very serious video game in a lot of respects, but there's also moments where you're thumbing through the garbage, finding a Twinkie to eat or something stupid like that. Like, and
much like real life.
Yeah, much like real life. That's one of the things I think I really appreciated about Wolfenstein 2, is that no matter how heavy-handed they got with the themes and the story of the game, it was always inherently at the same time kind of like, and we're a video game and we know that, and we're going to totally play that up. And I totally appreciated that, because to me that felt like exactly what they were doing. Is the dumb moments in that game, I think, are meant to be is over the top and is insanely outrageous purposefully, because they are they're basically acknowledging, yes, we are a video game.
Yeah,
so we can do these things, so why not?
One of my favorite kind of turns of events in the game is, I guess, one of the wackier things is, so after your head gets chopped off and your head gets then put onto the synthetic Aryan body, the Nazis are, of course, making a propaganda film about how they killed you. And so then you go to their Venus base to then audition for that role. And for your audition, you actually kill a Nazi, and then you get the part. And it's, I don't know, that whole like turn of events, I think is one of my like more favorite things this year.
Well, question. who did everyone get the achievement here or the trophy?
Yes. Yes.
For
The moment with with Hitler. There's a trophy and achievement you can get.
Oh, jeez.
Do
No.
you know what I'm talking about, John?
I do not recall.
There's you can kick. There's a moment where you have the ability to kick Hitler.
Oh, man.
After
I
he
do
pisses
not
himself and
recall
falls on the
kicking
ground.
Hitler.
Okay, because I was gonna say that's actually the test when the resistance happens. If you have that achievement or not, that's how we will weed them out. So I'm sorry,
Oh.
if bad news.
Oh,
came.
jeez. I didn't want to be in it anyway. That's fine.
But anyways,
They can take me.
but
Well, anyways, thanks for having me.
yeah.
That came out in context wrong. I just want them to just put me to sleep.
But anyways, we
real
are
nap.
talking about some of the bigger moments, but I want to start now getting into maybe specific for everyone. I want to talk about like those moments in the game that like for you specifically really resonated. Maybe they could be the bigger ones. For me, I really enjoyed because after I think we skipped it, but Caroline dies in the beginning of the game in a scene with Frau. It's sort of like
Frau
the bookend
Engel.
to that intro scene. And after that, not only is Blaskowitz's body dying, and he's sort of losing the will to fight, but he always keeps talking to Caroline, give me your strength, because he's been with her for so long, and he also saw her as an inspirational figure, and because she still had the fight with her, and the way she died is brutal. And he keeps saying Caroline, give me your wings.
Give me your wings, yeah.
Your wings, and it can feel very heavy-handed. And in these inner monologues, there's also how he's gonna die. He's not going to tell Anya that he's dying, and that he's not going to see the birth of his children. And it can feel very heavy-handed, but but as soon as he talks out loud, that there's that moment where Anya finally confronts him, is like, what the fuck? You're being extremely distant from me. And because he said, like, I'm going to put a distance between us. And she's all like, what the fuck? And he just fucking folds. He just like, I'm really sad that I'm going to die. And blah, blah. It adds to that richness, because we all have inner monologues, but then when it comes out, the reality sort of breaks. But that was one of my favorite moments in the game. Logan, is there a specific moment that you really, really like and maybe want to shout out?
I mean, outside of the entire stretch of nuking Roswell and then getting a new body, which is obviously the highlight 60 to 90 minutes of the game. The one thing I guess I would really shout out is the collectibles that you can get in the game. Like, I like to read normally I only really read the collectibles to any game when I really like the world, like the Mass Effects or like those type of games. And this was the first game in a really long time where I found myself like thumbing through every single newspaper clipping I found and things like that, because that is where you really start to get context and understanding about what was happening in the United States during this whole takeover. Because that was my question going into this was, okay, the Nazis have taken over. They're kind of running everything in America now, but how exactly did this happen? And then learning, I'd say even the biggest like plot points of the game, you really get through those clippings and those newspapers that you find and stuff like that, where you start to learn like, oh, the Nazis took over kind of internally because America kind of started shifting that direction themselves. That stuff was...
Or it was always there. Like, it was always there.
Yes.
Push.
Yeah, that was it. And it's like people started sympathizing after the Nazis won the war over in Europe. It was like the Nazi sympathizers within the country really started to come out, and they're like, maybe this isn't that bad. I mean, this is actually a good thing.
To kind of piggyback. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that is the most interesting elements of that game to me.
No, to kind of piggyback, my favorite moment in the game, and it's a really small moment when you're walking around, I don't know what city it was in Texas, but where you're meeting up with Super Spesh at the diner. And on the way, I mean, you're kind of exploring. It's one of the more open areas in the game, and you're exploring the city and kind of seeing all the Nazi imagery flying around. And you kind of, if you walk to it and you get it to at the right time, you see an older woman and a younger lady talking, and the older woman just casually mentions like, "Oh yeah, we're having a slave auction. Come on by." And it's like, yeah, this is definitely an era where, not slavery, but racism was still a big deal. But the fact that it was just like, oh yeah, slavery, no big deal. And, America, they really did a great job, I think, portraying America as just totally complacent and complicit in what was going on.
To quickly add to that, I feel like that scene could have easily been done bad. The thing I immediately had flashbacks to is BioShock Infinite, which is a fucking video game. But I think they do it pretty well because the newspaper clippings and stuff that are there are well written, and also it's not 100% idealistic. Like they did succumb, but also they thought they were just going to be welcomed. But you are also second-class citizens, actually. There's the moment with the Ku Klux Klan member and the Nazi officer asks them to, how's your German going? And he can't. Because really these people are just cowards. And they're cowards with hatred and bad ideas. But they don't paint them in this idealistic, this perfect thing. Which I really enjoyed. And I think the slave bit was a little bit much, but I think they ultimately landed.
There was
John, Seth, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because you brought up BioShock Infinite, I saw some people comparing the two on Twitter, and I think Dante, I can't remember his last name, but on Twitter, at Video Dante, incredible person, incredible writer, great. But they mentioned how in BioShock Infinite, the way that game's structured is that it shows you the beautiful city and then reveals why it's bad. But Wolfenstein 2, it takes a different approach where you take a while before you actually like land in the United States, and it kind of just sets up how to shit everything is. I mean, things were already bad beforehand, but like after Nazis have taken over, things have progressed and accelerated, and then it shows you the city afterward, and I guess the beautiful city, depending on who you ask to define beauty.
Right. Well, the first city you go to is New York, right? And it's nuked.
Yeah. It's nuked, and then you find like a small little resistance network, but then you see like the idyllic like Nazi civilization in Roswell, where people are walking around, and it just doesn't have that same shine that the city in BioShock Infinite does, because that different approach, I think.
And real quick, I also feel like in BioShock Infinite they don't connect the tie. Like, how did this happen? It's just happening, and isn't it fucked up? Where in Wolfenstein they ground it in some sort of reality that is pretty true today still. But John, what was a moment in the game that maybe really stuck out to you?
Ooh, God. I'm trying to recall all of the moments in the game. The most vivid ones coming back to me are the ones where I'm not actually engaging in combat, oddly enough. It's like when you're walking around the farmhouse, when you're in the courtroom for the trial, when you're just watching yourself to get decapitated. God.
If you don't have one, I'm not going to make you here. But
remind me of some of the moments. It's been over a month.
But before I do that, Logan, you mentioned that you found some of the best stuff in that game. The sort of the newspaper clippings, the quote unquote environmental storytelling. But a criticism about the game is that the spaces in the game are very restrictive and it's easy to get lost in. So a lot of folks didn't go out to find those, and I wanted to, but the game didn't give you the space or the tool set to actually do that, which I was really upset because I really wanted to find more of Sigrun's diary entries, and I couldn't find them because I was like, this is just a mess. Did you find that to be a problem at all?
I would say if you're trying to get everything in one go as you kill enemies going through the map, yes. I was finding that I would go through almost the entire sections of this game, clear out all enemies, and then almost sometimes literally go back to the start of the map and then just kind of start pouring over to find things. I know that's not ideal, and that probably speaks to what you're saying with how it's really not that well laid out, and it doesn't lend itself to searching around for that stuff. But that's how I played it, and I guess I was fine with that because it never really stuck out to me as like something awful that I disliked. But yeah, like I can totally see that, and I don't think the environments are poorly laid out. I just think they get a little cluttered at times. Like there's like too much going on in some of them.
I agree.
And talking about the stealth, kind of going back to that because we touched on that at the start. I think the stealth worked rather well in the New Order and the Old Blood. Obviously not amazing. The Old Blood, I think it worked best. This game, the environments get a little bit too bloated sometimes, and I honestly think that's why the stealth didn't work more than anything else. Like if it was a little bit tighter, like the best stealth sections I feel like were on the submarine and a couple others, like in New York and in New Orleans. Like those sections did not work out well.
Yeah, and I mean it's tough. It's tough going into that game after playing Doom last year.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I was playing it pretty much like, oh, it's a first-person shooter, Bethesda published. Like, I'm gonna run around and kill stuff. And the times where I tried to be stealthy just didn't work out in terms of, and I think that really kind of just lended itself to the game's difficulty too, where it's just like, no, we don't want you to play it like a complete badass, but it I don't know. It just kind of felt like it was all over the place in terms of.
It is a weird balance. Yeah. Like once I got double shotguns, those dual wielding shotguns, I just like totally.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's
all right,
the point of being stealthy?
Yeah.
I completely forgot that you could dual wield in that game. I don't think I ever did that.
And John, some good moments. There's a super special moment where he talks to you about the aliens and how it might be aliens. That's a pretty good moment.
So while you guys were discussing that, I did recall the most vivid memory of the whole you have to remember your lines and when you're incognito and you have to act out the scene for Hitler, you go into that box and you have to gun that dude down, and how he thinks, oh, this man is perfect for this role, and it's you, man. And like I think he pissed into a bucket too. I think I remember that.
He did piss into a bucket.
Oh god, yeah, that whole scene where I feel like I don't know if it was an illusion of choice or if it was an actual choice when you are tasked with reading the lines, because I nailed them perfectly. So if you hit like the wrong line, what would happen? I don't
wondering about that too.
I think you get shot. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Immediately you're dead.
But you get shot in this act of defiance because like he says it like in a really stupid manner, like this is garbage, and then you get shot. So I think it's done pretty well. But God, there's so much to talk about. But you mentioned that scene, John, and I think we maybe have to talk about that Hitler scene. How do we feel about the depiction of Hitler and that whole scene in this game? Neil, do you have any thoughts on that scene where we go to Venus and you trying out for your own role?
Yeah, I mean, kind of piggybacking on what Logan said earlier. The whole second half of the game just kind of felt it paled in comparison to the first half. Because the first part of the game was still really grounded into realism, even the part where you end up getting killed. It's just like, oh shit, like it just kind of, it just felt like it could really happen. The Hitler scene, while it was kind of entertaining for me and comical, it felt more like a caricature, and I guess that's kind of what they were going for, but it just kind of felt like, oh, well, what's this thing that we can throw in to kind of, make the end of the game, kind of give you a little bit of gratification there at the end, seeing Hitler kind of like sickly and dying, but it just kind of felt unnecessary. It kind of felt like the Wolfenstein, the rebooted Wolfenstein universe didn't really need Hitler. I thought Frau Engel and Death's Head were pretty good villains on their own, and Hitler was just in there for the sake of having Hitler in the game.
So I'll chime in with mine before I go around, because I guess I didn't make that clear. For me, that scene worked well for me personally. I think it is very over the top, but to me it worked because I hate how, and I think this was mentioned on an episode of Waypoint Radio. Avid listeners of Waypoint Radio will probably know what I'm talking about. But there's someone messaged in like they are tired about how all Nazi fiction or Nazi stories, the Nazis are seen as this perfect, organized, like they were so close, man. They're listen, that Hitler guy, you gotta give it to, yeah, he had some ideas.
Oh, and people say he's like a great public speaker, a great mobilizer.
Yeah, but then you also see like some of the history also says like towards the end of the days of the Third Reich, like that guy, like he was sort of losing it. He was losing it to illness a little bit. And
also like relying a lot on like painkiller injections.
Right. And to me, that moment I think is a little bit over the top, but I think there is maybe some merit to, you mentioned it, like the game maybe giving you that moment to look at this fucking idiot, like fucking look at this fucking clown, and giving you that moment of like giving you the opportunity to laugh at him and also kick his face in and get an achievement out of it as well.
Yeah, I think if I knew I could do that, it changed it maybe.
But for me, it was able to show why this man's scary, because there's that moment when he shoots Ronald Reagan and he does that whole speech that was actually censored in the German version. It's completely changed. It's not with the ferocity and the sort of power. Like he's like, if his words were like a fist, he was punching him and like had him on the ground and look at this fucking Jew. And it's really scary. But also they also give you that moment where he's pissing in that can or whatever because he's also fucking whatever. But John, how did that? Sorry, Logan, maybe you go. Logan, you can go.
Well, I want to jump in and just say, like, in terms of how they depicted Hitler, I think it was a very calculated thing because let's all be honest. Third game, there's going to be a mecha Hitler.
Yeah.
Why would there be a mecha Hitler? Because this dude's about to die because he's shitty and his kidneys are failing or whatever. So I think they needed to depict him as this delusional, shitty, dying old rat of a man in this game in order to bring about Mecha Hitler in the third game. So in that regard,
there's got to be an origin story.
Yeah, there's got to be a Hitler origin story for the third game. I think it was handled well, and I found it all as set up for the next game. Honestly,
sure. John, what are your thoughts
on how they depicted Hitler in the game,
or just that scene? Just your thoughts on that. You said that moment with you were reading the titles where wasn't your favorite.
The scene as a whole, I feel like it was like a pretty creative approach because I was honestly not expecting to have like the interaction, or you could argue as a QTE to where you have to actually say the lines. I thought it was just all going to be a cutscene, but a lot of the moments in the game that they could have made into cutscenes were rendered in game, and you had to actually act them out. What else? I mean, the scene as a whole was an interesting, Christ, I can't put the words out right now. It was a good scene. It was a fun time. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed most things about it. Can't wait for Mecha Hitler 2020.
And Seth, what were your thoughts on that scene?
I honestly, so I haven't gone back and revisited it, but the first time I was playing it, I was kind of like losing my mind a little bit just because of the turn of events that was happening. You're on a new body. You're auditioning for your own role in a propaganda film about how they killed you and how you're a coward. So, I mean, the depiction of Hitler really caught me off guard, but I think it was handled relatively well. I don't know. It's really weird because that game is so much of this speculative fiction, this sci-fi, and this alternate history.
Right.
But then there's this collision and this very real thing of seeing like Hitler's image, and of course he died before this year even at the point in the story. But it made me pause a little bit just because it was this really weird thing to see, like they reanimated Hitler kind of. But I thought it was handled pretty well, and ultimately the way that they portrayed him, even if it was a bit cartoonish, showing this guy as this kind of feeble old man. It was a lens on Hitler that Hitler himself didn't have control over, which that's kind of how most of his like images and public appearances were controlled when he was alive. So I thought it was handled pretty well.
Okay. Well, we're nearing the end of our runtime here. So I know this is a big, meaty game with a lot of stuff to talk about. And I'm sorry if we didn't talk about the thing you want to, but before we leave, does anyone have a last thing they want to say about Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus? Neil, do you have something to say?
Absolutely. We kind of touched on the subject, but I think the thing that really stood out to me the most was, just kind of how they portrayed the smaller moments. I think that's kind of why the last third of the game didn't really resonate with me, because you're going to Venus and you're on a space station, and it just felt like two different games at the end. My favorite parts of the game, from a narrative standpoint and from a gameplay standpoint, were from the parts where you're in America, because I mean, it felt real to me. Looking at history, I mean, you know that America isn't a country that's been invaded. It's not a country that has lost, quote unquote, a war, or at least not as badly as they depicted in this game. So seeing all those things, like Manhattan completely decimated by an atomic bomb, seeing like Texas completely, and I know that's obviously all stuff that is intentionally done, but those are my favorite parts of the game. I kind of wish they explored it more. It felt like there's a good 2 or 3 levels where they get into it, and it's really capped off really well with the execution scene. But I would have liked to see a couple more levels focused on, hey, here's the America, we know and love under Nazi control, and here's how fucked up it is.
Okay. John, do you have any final thoughts?
So just as a game, I feel like this kind of set the bar for narrative-driven games, as not just in the shooter genre, but as a whole for me this year. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I didn't expect it to draw me in like it did. Usually my typical gaming routine is play something for a couple of days when Gamefly sends it to me, then get bored, send it back, and keep playing Overwatch all day. But this is one of the games that I consistently came back to day after day, getting frustrated, but having fun with it still, nonetheless, because I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the characters. The gameplay was not the biggest factor in my liking of the game, unfortunately, just because of the whole difficulty spikes and pickup mechanics and all that sort of thing. But I feel like it sets a bar in a number of categories for me, and I really hope that we get more single-player games like this in the near future, and we don't just digress into a loot crate multiplayer-driven society.
I hope they actually get the chance to finish this game, because I don't know how well it sold. I guess it sold well on Black Friday, but
apparently there's a season pass too. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I got it,
Logan.
Yeah,
I kind of want to play it, but we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I think restating everything that's kind of been said already. This is a game about story and characters more than it is, I would say, about gameplay. I think I found the gunplay to be far more enjoyable than some of us here have talked about today. I don't think it is bad by any means, but I guess it's kind of samey throughout it. But yeah, this really does, as John said, like it sets the bar, I think, for narratives. Kind of, maybe not like a new bar or anything like that. It's not the greatest story ever told in a video game, but it stands out over the course of what I've played over probably the past 12 to 18 months. It is a concise single player story. And I also would guess I would like to credit Bethesda for continuing to put games like this out, because they have released Prey, Dishonored 2, the expansion.
They released 10 games this year, and I don't know how.
Wow.
They freaking The Evil Within 2, and then
that's Skyrim ports as well, by the way.
12 Skyrim ports. But they are really doubling down on these games right now, where I think over the past few months, I guess really only EA has been the one who's kind of shitting on single player games. Yeah, but this whole games as a service thing is becoming more and more intrusive, it seems like, year over year. So to see Bethesda continue to double down on these single player experiences, and even when they don't sell well, still stand by them, because Prey didn't sell well, Dishonored 2 didn't sell very well. I don't think this sold very well. Like, they're past, I'd say, like 5 releases of games that they've published have not been like sales darlings by any means.
They're a private company, right? I think, because I was going to say, let's see what their financials and March look. But
I think they are a private company. Yeah,
I think they have a board of directors, but that's about it. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But
that sounds about right. But yeah,
it doesn't seem like they're hurting for cash in any way.
No, and I went to their party they threw at E3 earlier this year, and yeah, they don't seem to be strapped for cash. I think they're
Quake Champions. Let me tell you about it. Multiplayer, Saber Interactive.
They're doing really well. But yeah, Seth, this game's good.
Yeah. Seth, what are your final thoughts on Wolfenstein?
So this is the game. I mean, we talked about kind of the frustrations of the gameplay, but it's also a game. I don't really play a lot of like post-story content in games, but I ended up killing all like the Uber Commandos that you get the Enigma codes to go kill, and I did like all those contracts and then unlocked this final one and did that. I think the story, you're told by the end of it, there's this big resistance that's happening, and I feel like it doesn't portray that a whole lot. I mean, you meet like 2 like little tiny disconnected resistance networks, but it's not super well portrayed. I think the story does really amazing things, though. They also have like Nazi like robots and Nazi AI that I'm interested to see where they go with in the third one. If that gets made, I think it will get made. But I think the game's really amazing, and I'm playing through the DLC right now, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, shout out to the end game content. I went back to replay it, leading up to this podcast, and it really did a whole lot more than what you would expect from a single player first person shooter. Because normally it's hey, here's your 10-hour campaign, you're in, you're out, you're done, and there's a whole lot of meat to that game.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of any single player shooter that adds side quests. Shout out to Call of Duty Infinite Warfare.
And they did it without like bloating the game too much. I think one of the bigger things that's going on in the games industry, besides like the microtransactions and all that stuff, is like, hey, let's make our games 30-40 hour open world games. And it's like, no, like if you want to play Wolfenstein 2 as a 12-hour just linear shooter, you can totally do that. But if you want to go around and collect everything, if you want to go do everything in the end game, there's tons of extra content that you can easily make it into a 30-35 hour game if you wanted to.
Well, Seth, you mentioned that resistance, like how you don't really get that feeling, and I think that's true, and I think that's going to be probably the biggest hurdle to overcome with this third game, like because that terrible credit scene obviously shows that stuff has happened. Like it seems like there is a section that we are not going to see happen when this final chapter happens, when they actually get a strength in numbers in a group. And I think that's going to be a very hard thing to connect. But with that being said, I think there's a lot of places where this game could have failed spectacularly. Oh, yeah. And I think they do it. They do it at least pretty competently. At least that they're being thoughtful about their decisions and where they're going with it.
Yeah. So one more thing about. Wait, were you finished?
Oh yeah, I'm done.
Okay. So one more thing about I guess the resistance at the end of the game. So they actually kind of like add a narrative context to what's essentially just like challenge maps of those Uber Commandos, where you just go revisit old levels and they're a bit harder and you have to go kill this guy, and then it's supposed to dismantle the Nazi regime. But you actually kind of see on the map in your hub world on your ship, you see kind of the retracting Nazi reign as you go and kill these Uber Commandos. So it gives you kind of like a visual representation of your actual like actions and their effects, but it's not like cutscenes or anything like that. And whenever you finish it all, there's no big like grand payoff. Oh, Nazis are gone forever. I don't know, but it adds something.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely feels like you're chipping away.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Well, with that, I think that does it for our discussion here of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Thank you so much, folks, for joining me for this discussion. Real quick before we sign off, going to do one more round of pimps to see where you can find these wonderful people. Seth, where can people find you on the internet?
Twitter is just kind of the best place. I mean, it's also like the hell website, but the best place to find me, and also like a lot of other news, but it's at ASAP Sunscreen on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. And that'll be in this. Also, this all will be in the description as well, folks. Neil, when can people find you?
Also on Twitter, I'm at the Young Neil, and I run a one-man YouTube channel called Red Tooth Games. So Red Tooth Games on YouTube and also on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Is that a Scott Pilgrim reference, by the way?
Yes, absolutely.
And Logan, where can people find you?
Twitter, I'm at Moreman12. You can find written stuff that I do, reviews, previews, all kinds of other stuff over at DualShockers. And then, as I said at the top, all other podcasts that I do, you can find at modelcitizensmedia.com.
And John, where can people at you?
Well, you can also find me on the dreaded dastardly hell site known as twitter.com at twitter.com/plankfan. I'm on LinkedIn. I don't know that URL. Please don't endorse me for anything. I have a MySpace, myspace.com/bonglord69. I don't know if it's still up. Probably not. I think they deleted my Club Penguin account. I think my RuneScape has been deactivated. So let's just say PlankFan on Twitter. That's where the only place you should really go.
And if you want to see more of John, he was a wonderful and pivotal role in Irrational Passion's Extra Life, and you can find those archives on youtube.com/Irrational Passions.
I was the tech boy, as they call me. No one calls me that.
Tech boy and wonderful personality as well.
That's a stretch.
Thank you for listening to this conversation, folks. Keep around for rationalpassions.com. We'll have other discussions on other games that we think are some of the best of the year, as well as guest top 10s and our final Giant Bomb style Game of the Year podcast of 5 days, where Nier Automata is going to get fucking robbed, but because I'm not part of those discussions,
Bold prediction.
That's going to be exciting. So stick around to irrationalpassions.com and at irrationalpod on Twitter. And you can find me at jcruzalvarez26. Until the next episode of these Game of the Year discussions, thank you so much for listening and have a good one. stop recording.
Did you so whenever you picked that Twitter name, did you address the first 25 J. Cruz Alvarez's as to why?
No, I just like
It's like a group
26.
chat. You're like,
Okay.
"Oh,
I'm always like, whenever I see someone with like a number in their Twitter name, I'm like, what happened to the others?
Oh boy. Okay, so export it as an MP3. Send it to me through either through a Dropbox link or a Google Drive link, whatever you use. I don't know what fucking storage solutions there are that send it as a cryptocurrency.
Mega upload.
I'll send it over Bitcoin."
I'll upload it as a torrent. And you have to seed it for me.
Cool.
So yeah, if you can do that before the weekend, that'd be best because that's probably when I'm going to edit all of these together.
Can you send us your email?
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
Let me do it in the Twitter DM, or that's probably best,
Yeah,
right? Instead of this
yeah,
chat, because this is so ephemeral. Okay, then I will do that.
All right, and whenever I send it over to you, George, I'll add a timestamp for whenever the audio recording changes over to my second recording after my mic fucked up.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Fine.
Alrighty. And with that, I am going to sign off because in a few hours I have to record another podcast. But
Good
alrighty.
luck. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. Y'all have a good night.